fellow patriots. Constitutional Sheepdog here, coming to you with a new video. Today we're going to talk about the Electoral College, the electoral process, and voting for president in the United States, and some of the current issues that are going on right now. So let's jump right into it. So at a town hall event in Mississippi, Democratic hopeful for president, Senator Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, pledged to avenge her predecessor, Hillary Clinton, and do away with the Electoral College if she is elected president. Her plan to get rid of the Electoral College caught a lot of attention among Democratic presidential hopefuls. Warren is just the latest in a line of prospective nominees who want to replace the electoral process and the Electoral College, thus allowing each state a certain number of votes proportional to their size and population, and replace that with a national popular vote that will, of course, favor Democrats. While she may be the next one in a group of people who are Democratic hopefuls for president who want to do this, she is the first one to announce her plan in a state that would be completely cut out of the presidential process were the national popular vote system to be implemented. Ironically, when she announced her plan in that state, which happened to be Mississippi, her plan suggesting that the national popular vote would make sure all Americans count equally in the process of electing a president is a complete farcity. She stated, quote, "Come a general election, presidential candidates do not come to places like Mississippi. They also don't come to places like California or Massachusetts because we're not the battleground states. My view is that every vote matters, and the way we can make that happen is that we have national voting, and that means getting rid of the Electoral College and every vote counts," end quote. While she's right on one count, meaning that around 90% of electioneering takes place in about 10 or 11 major battleground and swing states, eliminating the Electoral College won't really change the plan to win the presidency. It would merely change the select destination. Presidential candidates will still go to places like Mississippi in the event of a national popular vote. Places like California, New York, Virginia would basically more than dominate the electoral process. They would eventually be able to exercise near imperial rule over pretty much all the other states, which is great for Democrats, but not exactly fair for the people in the state of Mississippi. Her plan has a lot of other problems, one of them being a handful of extreme Democratic proposals promising to abolish the Electoral College, which is kind of like a kid in school who wants to run for student council promising that he'll do away with homework. It's not going to happen without a major change in how party politics is done. The Electoral College is enshrined in the Constitution and would require an amendment to alter. An amendment involves either calling the Constitutional Convention, which is extremely difficult to do, or obtaining 2/3 of the vote in both the houses of Congress, which is basically impossible. There are a handful of states which have pledged to buck the Electoral College system and assign their electors to the winner of the national popular vote. Acting on those votes could trigger a bit of a problem litigation standpoint-wise, and a potential constitutional problem as well. However, Warren seems very willing to commit to any proposal that earns her even a fraction of a percent at this point. Trailing far behind the other leaders for Democratic presidential hopefuls, she's basically unable to move her number past 7%. Kind of looks like her bid for president is over just as soon as it got started. But none of the extreme proposals has moved her any further up in the polls. So why is this important? Well, it's important because first thing that we need to understand is the Electoral College. So what is the Electoral College? Well, the Electoral College is a process. It's not a place. The Founding Fathers established in the Constitution as a compromise between election of the presidents by vote in Congress and election of the president by popular vote of qualified citizens. The Electoral College process consists of the selection of electors, the meeting of the electors where the vote for president and vice president, and the counting of electoral votes by Congress. The Electoral College consists of 538 electors. A majority of 270 electoral votes is required to elect the president. Your state's entitled allotment of electors equals the number of members in its congressional delegation, one for each member of the House of Representatives plus 2 for your senators. Under the 23rd Amendment of the Constitution, the District of Columbia was allotted 3 electors and treated like a state for purposes of the Electoral College. For this reason, the word state, when referred to in an Electoral College standpoint, also refers to the District of Columbia, even though it is not its own state. Each candidate running for president in the state has his or her group of electors. The electors are generally known by the candidate's political party, but state laws vary on how the electors are selected and what their responsibilities are. The presidential election is held every 4 years on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. You can help choose your state's electors when you vote for president, because when you vote for your candidate, you're actually voting for your candidate's electors. After the presidential election, your governor will prepare a certificate of ascertainment listing all the candidates who ran for president in the state, along with the names of their respective electors. The certificate of ascertainment also declares the winning presidential candidate in your state and shows which electors will represent your state at the meeting of the electors in December on the election year. Your state certificates of ascertainment are sent to the Congress and the National Archives as part of the official record of the presidential election. The meeting of the electors takes place on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December after the presidential election. The electors meet in their respective states where they cast their votes for president and vice president on separate ballots. Your state's electors' votes are recorded on a certificate of vote, which is prepared at the meetings by the electors. The state certificates of votes are then sent to Congress and the National Archives as part of the official records of the presidential election. Each state's electoral votes are counted in a joint session of Congress on the 6th of January in the year following the meeting of the electors. Members of the House and Senate meet in the House chamber to conduct the official tally of electoral votes. The Vice President, as President of the Senate, presides over the count and announces the results of the vote. The President of the Senate then declares which persons, if any, have been elected President and Vice President of the United States. The President then the President-elect then takes the oath of office and is sworn in as President of the United States on January 20th of the year following the presidential election. So that's what the electoral process is. Now, here's the thing. Why is the electoral process important? Why does the Electoral College have to continue the way that it is? Well, the Electoral College was put into place to ensure that no one state or few groups of states could preside their will over the populace of the United States. So what does that really mean for us? Well, if we look at the states in general, and we look at the voting habits of the states, not even so much the voting habits, but let's look at the states themselves. So the Constitution holds in it the power of the Electoral College. So you have states like California and New York who are very densely populated states, okay? These states are just, people are living on top of each other. You have so many people living in these states. Now, if you have a state like California and a state like New York, which are densely populated, and then you have other states like, say, Wyoming or, Nevada, New Mexico, some of these battleground states, right, currently that we use the term battleground states, are not as densely populated. So when the framers of the Constitution wrote the Constitution and created the Electoral College, they realized this and they said, well, hold on a second. We have states, and I mean, at that time they didn't have states like California and such, but they had states like Virginia, which was very densely populated. They also had other states in the South where they were very densely populated, and there was 2 or 3 of them that were so densely populated to the point that if they did just a national popular vote, those 3 states could decide the outcome of the presidential election for the entire country. And they said, well, we can't have that. Everyone needs to be able to have a voice. Everyone needs to be able to say, hey, this is who we want for president. So it's the same thing as that then as it is today, right? You have states like California and you have New York and Washington, D.C. who are densely populated. And the reason that the Democrats want to have just a national popular vote is because if you use just the few states that are democratically controlled and densely populated, such as D.C., New York, California, and a few select other ones, those states alone, when they vote for president and vote obviously democratically for the Democrat candidate, the liberal candidate, could in fact, just based on their state's population, win a presidential election for their candidate for the Democratic Party. And it completely removes other states from the process. So states like Wyoming and North and South Dakota and New Mexico, Nevada, states that have a less densely populated populace, even though those states are saying, no, we don't want that person for our president, their state is basically discounted altogether. Because if you added up all the other states and their vote, say, was for one person for president, and then you took just the overly populated, densely populated Democratic states, and they voted, which, again, keep in mind, this is only a few select states, New York, D.C., California, certain states. If they were to vote just based on their populace alone, could nullify the vote of the rest of the country because they have so many more people living in their state than these other states do combined. And that's a problem. So when the framers of the Constitution created the Electoral College, they made it a fair process. Just because California has one of the most densely populated states in the country, they're only given 55 electoral votes to be able to go to the Electoral College. And then you have other states that are less densely populated who are also given a number of votes based on the number of delegates that they have to the House of Representatives and their 2 senatorial states, that are delegates that they have coming in as well. And that's how it balances out. It balances the entire process so that the few states can't decide the outcome of a presidential election for the entire country. Everyone has a voice. This forces presidential candidates to have to go to these states and do their presidential electioneering. They have to go there and talk. They have to take into account these smaller states and what these states want. Because without that state's electoral votes, they're not going to get elected president of the United States. That's why the process was put into place, and that's why the process works. So trying to take out the Electoral College is great for Democrats. Why is it great for Democrats? It's wonderful for Democrats because if they do that, then they don't have to worry about these states, the breadbasket states in the middle of the United States. They don't have to worry about any of these smaller populous states, because without those electoral votes, the states mean nothing. They just go to the states that are most densely populated, and they turn around and electioneer as much as they can in those states, win the popular vote in those states, and those states combined total out more than the rest of the populace in the country. But that's not fair, because the framers of the Constitution knew that everyone deserves to be represented. So they need to take into account everyone. And this is why we have an Electoral College. So, Elizabeth Warren can sit here and say as much as she wants that she wants to do away with the Electoral College. These other Democrats would love to do away with the Electoral College. First of all, it's almost impossible to do, right? Because you need to either call a meeting of Congress, right, for the constitutional delegation, which is almost impossible to do, or you have to get a 2/3 vote, which is also extremely difficult to do. And they just don't have the backing to do that. So how are they trying to get around this? Well, they're trying to get around this by getting states to pledge that they will give their Electoral College votes to whoever the popular vote is, or whoever they feel that they should give them to. Basically giving the Electoral College delegates free carte blanche to vote for who they want, regardless of what the popular vote was in their state. But you can't do that. And if they tried to do that, it would create a firestorm. And it would create litigation problems. It create a constitutional crisis. It just can't be allowed. And it's not allowed. They can't do that, right? They have to vote the way that their state votes, right? The majority of their state will decide who those electoral votes go to. That's the way the process works. The more you know, the more you're informed. Stay vigilant.